I have had a few comments asking how I build my equipment in my videos, so I decided to make a full video detailing in depth each build I generally use when I'm playing Engineer. These are not the most optimized builds around, but they are the builds I have gravitated to over my time playing the game. I have 3 main builds, each with 2 sub-builds based on which weapon pairing I am using, generally Warthog and Breachcutter, or Stubby and PGL. I will show what upgrades and overclocks I take on each weapon on the left-hand side of the screen as I go through them. Feel free to use and improve on these as much as you'd like. First is my general use build, which I use for elite deep dives, hazards 4 and 5, or really any time I want to jump into a public game. Magnetic pellet alignment was the first overclock I ever got, and it's what got me playing Engineer in the first place, so I've used it quite a bit. Tier 1 fire rate and Tier 5 minor adjustments to offset to the downside from the overclock, Tier 2 ammo for more reliability, and Tier 4 damage for more punch. I use quick reload in Tier 3 because I have this weapon out 90% of the time, and with a clip size of 6 I need to reload quite frequently. High voltage crossover gives the Breachcutter a bit more staying power, as it provides both a pseudo-stun and extra damage from the electricity, allowing me to take the extra ammunition in Tier 2 and armor breaking for Praetorians in Tier 4. I don't really mind the low clip size, as I'm rarely shooting more than 2 times at any given threat, and the Born Ready perk takes care of the actual reloading. I take longer beam duration in Tier 1 and quick deploy in Tier 3, so I can deal with high threat targets at a variety of distances, and triple line split for making hitting multiple targets that much easier. EM Refire is the only overclock for the Stubby which increases damage per bullet, so the rest of this build is dedicated to controlling the absolute bullet hose this overclock creates. A damage and an ammo from Tiers 1 and 3 is pretty standard for most Stubby builds, and Tier 5 electrical arc can be a lifesaver when I'm being rushed down by a wave. I find myself shooting weak points slightly more often than electrified targets, so I generally prefer the hollow point bullet for Tier 4. I use clip size in Tier 2 because otherwise I find myself reloading at critical points far too often. Fat Boy may not necessarily be a meta overclock, but is just so satisfying to use. Large swarm, boom, gone. Narrow choke point, good luck getting anything smaller than a Praetorian through that. Armor for Tiers 1 and 2, bringing the total up to 5 nukes on my person, and 3 from each resupply. Armor breaking and stun in Tiers 3 and 4 respectively, for Hazard 5 Praetorians who are not killed instantly, and Spiky Grenade because running proximity trigger in tight quarters is the perfect way to rebound the nuke into my own team. Mark II and Defender system in Tiers 1 and 4 respectively give my turret plenty of damage per bullet to watch my back with, and quick deploy in Tier 2 means I can plunk her down on very short notice. I prefer having stun in Tier 3, as it helps to delay any threats closing in on my flank before I can deal with them. This is probably the most important piece of equipment in this build, as the repellent additive in Tier 3 is what allows me to control the battlefield to the extent that I do, creating a funnel on flat ground to press targets into a trap, discouraging glyphids from advancing on low ceilings, creating a safety shelter for a point defense, or any number of other things I can do to control where the enemy comes from would not be possible without it. Ammo in Tier 1 for more control opportunities, and fall damage reduction in Tier 2 because it is the only option.
Out of ammo!
Proximity grenades are my preferred grenade for this build, as they can either cover small holes in my defenses, or be used offensively to thin the stream of oncoming enemies through a choke point.
Die like your mother dead!
For my active perks I use Field Medic and Berserker, and for passive I use Born Ready, Thorns, and Vampire. Field Medic is pretty self-explanatory. Minimizing downtime is a good thing for any team. I use Berserker as a self-rescue tool for when I inevitably overextend and get surrounded. Vampire stacks quite well with Berserker for getting me back out alive, and I find myself pickaxing enough things in the face that I value it over Sweet Tooth. Thorns is great at dealing with swarmers, and it allows me to safely ignore them unless there are enough of them to power attack.
Earn your paycheck, team. Got a doozy of a swarm on the way.
Bosco!
My bosco for running this build solo uses a combination of tier 1 bullet damage and tier 5 electric bullets to maximize bosco's damage to single targets.
Think you could kill me?
I take tier 2 rockets with the additional rocket in tier 3 and armor breaking upgrade in tier 4 to help deal with grunt guards or praetorians in awkward positions for my other options. My second build is hyper-focused on elimination missions, gimmicky to a fault, and probably not very well balanced, but I love playing it for all of those reasons. Lightweight magazines provide slightly more ammunition and a faster reload, freeing up tiers 2 and 3 for other options, such as more pellets and a recoil dampener respectively. Fire rate in tier 1 and damage in tier 4 are both good choices for increasing the damage I do to a dreadnought in between its shell recharges, and I take turret whip in tier 5 for cracking open said shells. Return to Sender is a novel way to increase the damage output of the breach cutter, as you can theoretically double the damage of every shot by reversing it properly. Clip size in tier 1 and ammo in tier 2 are both taken for balancing out the ammo reduction of this overclock, and the extra width and plasma trail in tiers 3 and 5 deal with any swarmers the dreadnought has spawned while also adding just a little bit more damage. Stun in tier 4 because tier 4 on the breach cutter has no effect on dreadnoughts whatsoever, and I'd rather have stun for anything else that I might run into. Turret arc is good cheesy fun, especially because while dreadnoughts are immune to the shock condition normally, they still fall under its effects while in contact with the electrical arc between my turrets. Ammunition in tier 3 to offset the reduction from the overclock, and recoil reduction in tier 2 to ensure more shots land on target for triggering the arc. Higher electrocution chance upgrade in tier 1 makes triggering the turret arc more reliable, and bonus damage to electrified targets in tier 4 means that I get to keep the damage increase even when shooting the dreadnought's shell. Tier 5 electrical arc saves on ammunition against small waves of enemies, as I don't have a lot of that to go around in this build. Hyperpropellant deals consistently high damage to dreadnoughts, and the reduced explosion radius is actually a benefit here, as I won't accidentally hit my allies every time I shoot the dreadnought. Extra ammunition in tiers 1 and 2 is the best way I've found to increase my overall damage, which also works well with homebrew explosives in tier 4 by increasing its consistency throughout the fight. Armor break in tier 3 is for praetorians more than anything else, and the tier 5 spike grenade adds just a little bit more damage to the weapon as a whole. The Gemini turret upgrade in tier 1 is the most important part of this build, as it allows the Stubby's turret arc to be set up, as well as provides enough of an ammo pool for the Warthog to turret whip throughout the dreadnought fight. I use quick deploy in tier 2 for faster setup times, and more ammunition in each turret in tier 3 for either more turret whips, or more reliable cover for anything trying to interfere with the fight. I prefer the Defender system in tier 4 to help boost the lackluster damage of the individual Gemini turrets, and as a control method to prevent the turrets from constantly shooting the armored face of the dreadnought. The clip size bonus in tier 1 makes patching up holes in terrain caused by the dreadnought just a little bit faster, as well as providing a small ammo boost. I take ammo over repellent in tier 3, as more often than not I am using my platforms to make an area I want the dreadnought to be walking on, especially if that's where my turrets are set up, and of course, fall damage reduction in tier 2. I use plasma bursters on this build to help make up for the lack of swarm killing power it brings, as I don't have very many other tools for dealing with those. I find Field Medic even more important on elimination missions, as picking up someone who took a bad hit immediately prevents the team DPS from dropping too much. Dash is an excellent repositioning tool when I remember to use it, and has saved me from several sticky situations. I swapped out Vampire for Sweet Tooth as well, because there are far fewer opportunities to pickaxe grunts when there is a dreadnought on the loose. I take a slightly edited bosco build for doing elimination missions, taking Tier 2 rockets with the Fear the Rocket upgrade in Tier 4 and faster rocket recharge in Tier 5, while keeping the bullet damage in Tier 1 and the extra rocket in Tier 3. This maximizes the number of rockets I can shoot on any given mission, providing an excellent wave clearing tool without compromising Bosco's damage against the Dreadnought. This last one is the build I use when playing with greenbeards, and or on lower hazard levels, as it focuses on mobility and area control with minimal setup. Perfect for quickly adapting to whatever mess my team may have gotten themselves into. Mini shells gives the Warthog an absurd amount of ammunition, letting the rest of my build focus on other aspects. Tier 2 pellets, Tier 4 damage, and to a lesser extent Tier 1 fire rate help make up for the damage reduction from the overclock, while the Tier 3 recoil dampener stacks with the overclock's reduced recoil, essentially removing it entirely. Tier 5 turret whip in conjunction with the Hawkeye system makes for a surprisingly effective, if somewhat janky, pseudo-grenade.
Collection completed. Well done. Pull the escape pod in when ready.
Stronger plasma current does not provide a whole lot of extra damage, but the projectile duration stacks with the Tier 1 extended beam duration, which makes it an excellent overclock for dealing with targets at a distance. Tier 3 width and Tier 5 triple split make hitting far-off targets much more forgiving, and the extra ammo from Tier 2 lets me miss 1 or 2 shots without much consequence. Tier 4 stun makes this weapon a good rescue option, as stunt bugs don't bite my teammates. Lightweight rounds are similar to mini shells but for the stubby, and with less severe penalties. Damage in Tiers 1 and 3 more than make up for the overclock damage reduction, and the fire rate in Tier 2 actually ends up boosting the fire rate to be significantly faster than stock as well. Hollow point in Tier 4 works well, as I have no investment in electrical chance, and on lower hazard levels more things will die before being electrocuted anyways. Clip size in Tier 5 significantly lowers how often I need to reload as well. The RJ250 compound is single-handedly the best mobility tool available to engineers. It's perfect for getting materials I've platformed that the scout may have missed, or reviving someone who went down in an awkward position. Tier 1 and 2 ammo for more jumps, armor breaking in Tier 3 for Praetorians, and stun in Tier 4 to give me more breathing room. I take Sticky Grenade for the bonus damage, which gives this weapon a slightly better matchup against larger foes. Tier 1 Mark II turret provides more than enough damage for lower hazard levels, and the Tier 4 Hawkeye system allows me to more efficiently split my fire to where my allies need it. I take ammo capacity in Tier 3 so I don't have to redeploy as frequently, and extra ammunition in Tier 2 because I often leave the turret up until it's run out of ammo, which eats through my ammo supply rather quickly. I take max ammo in Tiers 1 and 3 because I often find myself building bridges and staircases for other players, especially in extraction situations. The fall damage reduction in Tier 2 comes in handy surprisingly often, for catching both myself when using the RJ250 compound, and other players who missed a jump or released a grappling hook slightly too early. Decoy grenades are very useful for spreading out aggro should someone end up surrounded, or as bait for getting the bugs into an open area where they will be easy for everyone to shoot. They're also fun and safe to throw around in the drop pod for a small dance party during the extraction period. I take the same perks as on my primary build, but for slightly different reasons. Berserker is good for dealing with the occasional oppressor, and Field Medic is great for making sure that nobody stays down for too long. Vampire allows me to sustain myself through any damage I do take, while leaving the red sugar for my teammates, as Thorns will often reduce a bug that does hit me to low enough health for a single pickaxe strike to finish them off. Born Ready just means I never have to reload my rocket jumper, which is worth it on its own. My bosco for this build is designed primarily for exploration, as a reduced threat level and lower hazards gives me room to work with.
Help me mine this.
Mining speed in Tier 1 helps me move quickly, and the extra lumosity in Tier 3 makes exploring cave systems much easier. Tier 2 rockets with the Tier 4 cryo upgrade make quick work of most larger threats, as only 2 can freeze nearly every large creature in the game. The faster recharge in Tier 5 will recharge both of the rockets in only 80 seconds as well, allowing me to freeze quite a few things on an average mission. And that's my builds. I'll have a link to each build in the description for easy access, and I'll be in the comments to answer questions about these builds or other things about engineer loadouts.
Rock and stone!
Have a wonderful day.